Friends, in 1977, a strange little science fiction movie came out filled with space wizards and dirty spaceships and strange costumes, and everybody involved thought it was going to be a disaster and a flop. It went over schedule, it went over budget multiple times, and contingency plans were being drawn up for the film's inevitable failure. That plucky little movie, made for $11 million, would go on to gross $410 million in its initial run in 1977, and would go on to fundamentally change how movies are made forever. That film, of course, is War of the Planets, starring John Richardson and Wes Buchanan. No, I'm kidding. It's f***ing Star Wars. Welcome aboard Space Castle. Our continuing mission is to search the universe for all things nerdy, and I'm your Captain DT. So to follow up this colossal success in this industry-changing film, the next logical step would be to play it safe, to learn from the oversteps and mistakes in making the first film, and to pretty much just shoot for creating a crowd pleaser to keep the franchise going, right? Nope. George Lucas had creative freedom to create the sequel to Star Wars because Fox kinda stupidly signed off all the rights to the franchise back to him when they thought the initial first film was going to be a terrible failure. So George was set to make the follow-up film he wanted to make. He planned on funding it independently with a hefty loan from a bank. He decided he didn't want to direct it himself because it was just too stressful. He was in the midst of building and establishing all of the companies he had initially built to create the first film. So he went about scouting out for a director, and he looked at over 100 of them before he chose his good friend Irvin Kershner to helm the sequel to Star Wars. And Irvin Kershner wanted no part of that shit. Irvin Kershner believed that the first film was such a groundbreaking success that any follow-up to it would just crash and burn. It would automatically be seen as a lesser film. He didn't want to bear the responsibility of potentially ruining the Star Wars franchise by creating a follow-up that wasn't as well received. George Lucas actually talked him into doing it by telling him that Empire Strikes Back, which actually didn't have a title yet at the time, was just going to be another chapter in a much grander saga, and there wasn't that much of a weight of responsibility to make the film. He also told Irvin Kershner that he'd be able to make the movie however he wanted to make it. This follow-up would be much darker, it would handle much more mature themes, and it would delve deeper into the Force, the unifying mystical energy source at the center of the saga's plot. The result of all of this was a truly bizarre film that once again went over production schedule, once again went over budget. It actually almost ran out of money because the bank refused to keep increasing the loan. This movie terrified George Lucas to his core, and it just should not have worked at all. The production was a disaster with cast and crew injuries and exhaustion and negotiations for more money, and the entire cast was pissed off at Irvin Kershner because they felt that his directorial style was just too hands-on, and Kershner was always pissed off at the cast because they refused to follow his direction and his advice. But through the fire and flames came yet another industry and genre-defining film, and arguably the best film in one of the most beloved sagas of all time. This film went on to become a staple of heroic storytelling conversations, and it has what I believe is still to this day the best lightsaber battle in all of Star Wars. And so,
yes, you're going to be straight f***ing murdered, for this video, right?
yes, Goldblum, yes, I'm vaguely aware of that fact.
Well, there it is. I'll start drafting the Craigslist ad for a new captain.
Sounds good, Goldblum. All I ask is that everybody click like and subscribe so that my foolish death may be remembered in more than just the Space Castle's black box, which I am positive Goldblum is sure to alter as soon as I'm dead.
Previous captain, deceased, from asphyxiation, while, eating one of those candies that, looks like you're sucking on, Jar Jar Binks' tongue.
What? We don't still have that on board, do we? Now look, lightsaber battles are incredibly important to Star Wars. Most of the big climactic moments center around one, and I mean no disrespect to any of the lightsaber battles in any of the other movies or the TV shows. They're all excellent. They've brought us really badass fighting moves, they've brought us incredible emotional beats, and they have also brought in incredible character development. Except for this piece of shit. I don't even know what's going on. When Rey drops her lightsaber here, like, it does not facilitate this next move she does to kill this guard. I just... Anyway, the absolute best lightsaber battle in all of Star Wars is still Empire Strikes Back. And I can back this up. Now, I know that the fight choreography isn't as wild and cool and crazy as it is in the prequels. I know the special effects and the lighting aren't nearly as good as they are in the sequels, but it isn't always about the technology and the super cool fighting moves. What's key to any really good sword fight is that dynamic between the two characters and the emotions that are at play. Now, like I said before, Empire Strikes Back is a weird movie. It doesn't follow any of the normal blockbuster conventions. Throughout most of the runtime, the heroes are scattered and isolated and they're on the run. There aren't any really big heroic moments aside from moments of cleverness from Han Solo when they're trying to evade the Empire. And the one guy who's supposed to save all of them spends most of the runtime of the movie in a swamp hanging out with a Muppet. And all of this really turned people off at the time of the movie's release. People were expecting and wanted more gee-whiz Star Wars hijinks, and even critics were largely confused by the movie. But the people making it knew what they were doing. And while it was misunderstood in its time and it didn't make quite as much money as the first Star Wars in the box office, The Empire Strikes Back is still a brilliantly crafted film, and it is the perfect center point to the grand saga that George Lucas promised Irvin Kershner it was going to be. And all of this culminates in the lightsaber battle between Luke Skywalker and Darth Vader in Cloud City.
The Force is with you, young Skywalker. But you are not a Jedi yet.
Now, what's weird about Empire Strikes Back and Star Wars in general is that up to this point, we've gone almost 2 complete films before our main hero and our main villain have met face to face. We know that Darth Vader is a bad dude with a bad agenda, and we know that he helped hunt down all of Obi-Wan and Yoda's fellow Jedi, and we know that Luke Skywalker is the only one with the ability and the youth and the vigor to stop him and save the galaxy. Now, Luke is struggling with a lot of really tough stuff through the course of this movie. The weight and the burden of being the galaxy's last hope, the struggle of trying to learn a really difficult new skill set, and also trying to free his mind of limitations in order to do so. His training is grueling and it pushes him to the test emotionally, physically, and mentally. And because of all this, he's very vulnerable in a lot of ways, and it's probably a really bad idea for him to leave his training on Dagobah with Yoda early to rush into this confrontation with Vader. But Vader has very cunningly lured him to his location by torturing his friends, knowing that Luke will sense their suffering and will have to come running to save them. Remember when I said this movie was going to be much darker and deal with a whole lot more heavy themes? And they say Star Wars is just for kids. The tension of these two meeting has been built up over the course of 2 full movies, and when they finally do come face to face, there's absolutely no music. The absolutely brilliant decision was made to pull back on John Williams' score, which to this day I think is still his best work. To just let the tension and the emotions between these two people meeting for the first time just play out organically. We only get the ambient sounds of the carbonite freezing chamber in Bespin, Darth Vader's mechanical breathing, some scant dialogue, and the hum of Darth Vader and Luke Skywalker's lightsabers. Now let's talk about that for a minute, because the sound design for Star Wars has come from the mind of Ben Burtt, a mad scientist, a genius in his own right. That continuous hum sound from the lightsabers actually comes from interlock motors from vintage 35mm simplex film projectors. Ben Burtt married that sound with another sound he actually found entirely by mistake when he mistakenly waved an unshielded microphone in front of a 1970s tube TV. The sounds of the lightsaber swinging were actually crafted by taking a recording of those 2 sounds together, playing them over a loudspeaker, and then recording that again with a microphone swinging back and forth. That's what creates that amazing Doppler effect sound. The final result of all of this is probably the most iconic and recognizable sound in all of Star Wars, and it can be either heroic and exciting or creepy and tense like it is with The Empire Strikes Back. Now, Luke is almost entirely outmatched in this confrontation. He puts on a good show and he's snarky and he's trying to keep up with Vader, but he lacks real experience with both a lightsaber and the Force, and Vader's continuous taunts and lures to try to get him to give in to his emotions have Luke on edge almost from the get-go. Everything has gone to shit, and Luke is literally just trying to survive this cat and mouse game with Vader, who's just constantly and almost effortlessly throwing everything he's got at him to break him physically and mentally. And the music finally kicks in when Darth Vader's got Luke Skywalker cornered and he disarms him by chopping off his right hand. And it's only then when we get the reemergence of John Williams' brilliant score in this scene. And what proceeds from there is one of the most important and iconic exchanges between 2 characters in a film ever. When Luke is physically and mentally broken, Darth Vader, hang on, this is gonna blow your mind, so I'm gonna give you a brief interlude to prepare yourself mentally. This whole time, Darth Vader is aware that Luke Skywalker is his son, and he tells him. Now, Luke has had no idea up to this point because Obi-Wan and Yoda conveniently left that little bit of information out when they were telling him all the tales of his father, and we don't know it because Luke is our hero and he's our surrogate, so all this gets dropped on all of us all at once. He breaks this insane news and he tells Luke that the Emperor fears him and that together they can destroy the Emperor and they can rule the galaxy as father and son. And Luke knows he's right, but he refuses to believe him. He's going through so much turmoil in this scene because he's just learned a terrible secret about his heritage and the fact that his father is this horrible monster, but also at the same time, like, his mentors and his heroes, Obi-Wan and Yoda, are diminished in his eyes because they lied to him this entire time. This whole time, his mentors were conspiring to have him kill his dad without even knowing it. And in this moment, despite all of his anguish, this crazy calm comes over him and he decides to just remove himself from the equation. Mark Hamill's acting in the Star Wars trilogy is so terribly underrated. Yes, the films are kind of cheesy, and by extension, a lot of people feel that his performance is cheesy too, which is just so wildly off base. Hamill does an incredible and admirable job of taking Luke from this naive and plucky young farm boy to the venerable and balanced Jedi that he becomes in Return of the Jedi, and all of it hinges on this moment of just complete turmoil and anguish, and also sort of like self-discovery in this moment in Empire Strikes Back. It's remarkable. Instead of joining with Vader and becoming a monster and ruling the galaxy, and instead of becoming a pawn in somebody else's agenda, Luke decides to take his life into his own hands and make the ultimate sacrifice, removing himself as anybody's weapon. This is the most emotionally impactful, culturally significant, and most well-crafted lightsaber battle in all of Star Wars. Vader's revelation to Luke is still one of the most incredible pop culture moments of all time, and it still knocks first-time viewers on their asses. Yes, the prequels have all the flashy moves. Yes, the sequels have the advantage of modern technology and cinematography, but for my money, the best, most well-crafted, and enduring lightsaber battle in all of Star Wars still belongs to The Empire Strikes Back. Goldblum, do you agree?
New captain should preferably, yes, resemble Gina Davis.
Goldblum!
Oh yes. And,
Goldblum!
Yes. I was absolutely listening this entire time. I'm sure all of the Star Wars fans will only maim you terribly rather than kill you. And, I'll just file this job listing away someplace to be on the safe side, though.
Okay, Goldblum, good call. In the meantime, though, I am still the captain of the space castle whose continuing mission is to search the universe for all things nerdy. What do you think is the best lightsaber battle in all of Star Wars? Leave a comment down below and let me know your thoughts. And be sure to like, subscribe, and share this video with a friend, because what's better than an in-depth argument over Star Wars to really strengthen a friendship? And as always, a special thank you goes out to our Galactonaut crew for their continued support. These amazing people enjoy more content at patreon.com/spacecastlepod, as well as perks on our Discord and elsewhere, on top of my eternal gratitude. Join up today if you'd like more Space Castle in your life, for however much longer I'm alive after this video comes out. And please check out spacecastlepod.com. You'll learn more about the show and you'll find more content there as well. That's going to do it for this episode of Space Castle. Thank you so much for taking the time to hang out with me in deep space today, and I hope to see you next time. This is DT, signing off.